The meta of Scarlet and Violet Draft League over the past year has been pretty much just offense. There's little room for different playstyles because of the overwhelming power creep and introduction of terrestrialization, which has the ability to overwhelm any attempt of a defensive core. Just recently, I've spoke about this on a podcast type video with famous YouTuber OG Albina and professional Waffle King L5. However, something else I mentioned in these was how to choose defensive pieces for your team. A key thing I like to make light of is if you choose to grab pieces to make a defensive core, they need to be counter meta type Pokemon. So what do I mean by this? In the simplest terms, it's Pokemon that can deal with top threats with little areas of passivity versus any of their sets. This is something I mentioned during my draft analysis when I picked up Slowbro and tsareena, and I even added onto this core with the addition of Ursaring. These Pokemon, if built correctly, have the tools to be great walls to all the top threats, while not being setup fodder or just being overwhelmed by the presence of Terra. This idea reigns true in my Week 5 match of the TGS versus OG Albina. Yeah, you've probably seen this guy before. He's only one of the biggest Draft League creators in the community, and he's also the commissioner of the league. Seriously, if you want to learn more about Draft League format, check him out because there's a ton of videos on his channel. With that being said, let's get into the matchup. A big trend that's been very present in SV Draft League is that one person drafts Sun, and OG Albino was that guy. With good Pokemon in and out of Sun, I need to make sure that I'm accounting for multiple styles of teams he can produce and not get overwhelmed by the sheer offensive nature that Sun is. So, let's go into what I believe is definitely coming to this matchup. Raging Bolt, it has an insane offensive matchup since my ground is weak to Dragon and my Fairy is weak to Electric. Primarina, it abuses my poor Fairy resists and can defensively sponge against Garchomp and Samurott Hisui. Roaring Moon, it's faster than my entire team bar Sneasler and is a good late game setup sweeper. Torkoal, Sun makes his photosynthesis Pokemon near impossible for me to swap into and gives him some removal versus a potential hazard stack Garchomp. It may be crazy to say I was not set on Blaziken coming, but Garchomp and Slowbro specifically give it a lot of issues offensively. With that in mind, outside of Komala, I can really see an argument for the last two slots in his team being any of the remaining Pokemon. So without further ado, let's see what I brought. Let's start it off with my three defensive pieces of Slowbro, tsareena, and Ursaring. In a matchup versus Speed Boost Blaziken, Slowbro had to come. I would have loved to run Rocky Helmet to punish Blaziken hitting just attacks like Close Combat and Flare Blitz, but a +2 Life Orb knockoff Oko's Slowbro, so I opted for Culver Berry instead. This also made Slowbro a decent soft check into Roaring Moon, because with or without the Culver, knockoff doesn't do too much for Slowbro, and Body Press does a lot in return. Future Sight is great for forcing damage on Primarina, and Scald is generally a good attack versus his team. tsareena is rocking out with an offensive Assault Vest set this week. tsareena's coverage is very strong against this team, and not a lot of Mons want to take a knockoff. tsareena is here to facilitate his double Electric Core plus Primarina and remove items in the process, and stop Sandy Shocks from getting hazards versus my team. This is also my definite lead if I see a Torkoal, because I don't expect Torkoal to lead versus a likely Garchomp. This will give me the opportunity to knock off a Heat Rock or Boost as it swaps in, which will give my setup threats more leeway later on in the game. Ursaring makes its second appearance with a bulk up 3 attack set. The only Mons that have a chance to even two-shot this is Blaziken or a Choice Banded Rillaboom, which I have checks for. Besides that, Ursaring can easily pivot in on Pokemon like Primarina or Raging Bolt and dish back big damage with any of its attacks. The only way he actively can force out Ursaring is with something like Blaziken, which Slowbro will always be around for. The idea is that Ursaring can deal with a lot of his big offensive threats like the Primarina or Roaring Moon and force them out to get a lot of necessary chip that I need for some of my setup sweepers later on. Next on the team is Garchomp, which is rocking out with the Haban Berry so I don't get immediately forced out by Raging Bolt or Roaring Moon. Stealth Arcs are very good against OG Albina's team, and Ground plus Poison coverage is great for the rest of his team. Garchomp has the goal of removing or weakening one or two of his big threats because his typing plus Haban Berry gives it the capabilities of taking any hit while also dishing back a lot of damage in the process. Enamorous is up next and Misty Terrain. This set may look goofy, but with only one fighting resist in Primarina, and the rest of my team pressuring that Primarina, Terra Fighting seems super solid. Misty Terrain is weird, and honestly it's only a last-ditch type move, but it stops Enamorous from getting burned or slept by Torkoal, resetting Rillaboom's Grassy Terrain, and making Roaring Moon's Dragon moves weaker into it because I definitely plan on terrestrializing into a fighting this game. This isn't necessarily my win con, but it can absolutely start steamrolling once I get even one or two superpowers off. Last up is the win condition, Sneasler, and I decided Mirror Herb is how I wanted to get my Unburdened proc this week. His two obvious cleaners are Blaziken and Roaring Moon, which really needs setup to get going versus my team. So Sneasler can swap in on this setup and then outspeed the rest of his team and basically win the game from there. Its typing also lets it swap in on a close combat or knockoff in case they opt to not go for the setup move. As I mentioned before, the team has 1 fighting resist, so close combat plus dire claw was all I really needed. Last move I added was the new move Upper Hand, so I could stop his strong priority users like Rillaboom or Raging Bolt from revenging me. So that's my team for week 5 of the TGS vs OG Albina. The battle starts and... what does Komala even do? I don't know what a Komala does. Another thing to note is the Raging Bolt revealed Terra Ghost, which means Sneasler and Enamorous will need some chip on it. My dedicated lead is still Tsareena, as he leads off with hard with the Raging Bolt. I take the opportunity to knock off here, as he Terra's probably fearing Triple Axel, and I get very important damage off. With nothing taking on Tsareena too well, he pivots Blaziken in turn 2 to take the knockoff. Slowbro is a free pivot here, however he makes a good double into his Primarina. But now I'm ready to make a play. He very well could double here, which he does make the double. Could have called that. How much does Ursaring take? Oh yeah, I EV'd to not get 2-shot. That was the goal of it. I think I'm gonna send him out. He goes for Alluring Voice. I think Primarina's gonna come out here, or Sandy Shocks. I feel like I'm free to body slam here though. He's literally max defense. This shit is just max defense here. I feel like Shocks comes out here. Or Ursaring comes out here, or even Raging Bolt could come out here. I could see Raging Bolt trying to come out here. I actually think that's definitely gonna be his play. I think I go Tsareena maybe. Because I want to double here into Tsareena. I feel like Sareena's help. I'm gonna double into Tsareena. Yeah, he does go Raging Bolt, that's what I thought. With necessary information on Primarina, and now being in a good spot with my Tsareena offensively, I click a free Petal Blizzard, fishing for a roll to kill the Raging Bolt. However, he opts to go into the Blaziken again. I once again go back out to Slowbro, this time on a Swords Dance, and easily chew the knockoff to knock out Blaziken with Scald. Raging Bolt comes back in, and I decide to swap my Tsareena back in, leaving the Draco Meteor on 2%. My opponent actually forgets about Queenly Majesty in an attempt to knock me out with Thunderclap, which allows me to put Raging Bolts in range over Stealth Rocks. Because of this misplay, he's now forced into sacking his Komala. So, at this point, I'm up 6-3 essentially with the Bolt so low, so I just need to lock up this endgame. Out comes Big Shocks. He's probably just gonna kill me here, which is fine. I'll just like spin on the off chance he doesn't. Okay. Let's go Garchomp here. And I believe I just Stomping Tantrum. He goes Primarina. Doesn't take that much damage there. I don't want to switch in Ursaring. I could Poison Jab. If I Poison Jab, I might just win with Enamorous. I mean, I could also just win with Sneasler at this point, I think. I feel like it's more important. I'm gonna jab here. Give me a poison here. Oh, I just like shoot it. I didn't realize I could do that little. So still the only issue is the Roaring Moon. But if Roaring Moon comes out, I can switch Sneasler in the DD, right? And then I just copy him, get my Mirror Herb proc, then I should be fine after that. I can even go Sneasler on it right now. And like if he goes for Scale Shot, he goes Shocks. That's an interesting play. Do I rock here? Yeah, this thing's set up fodder for Enamorous. I could just go out to it in Superpower. Especially if Chomp outspeeds here. If a Chomp doesn't outspeed, then I... Okay, so Chomp didn't outspeed. But we have this thing dead. We live that, not bad. Out comes Roaring Moon. Do I go hard into Sneasler here? DD's the only thing that could be scary. If he just Scale Shots, yeah, I'm just gonna go hard into my Sneasler. Let me proc that, yeah. With triple speed thanks to Unburden plus the Dragon Dance, Sneasler has no issue finishing off the game for us. So, yeah, that was my week 5 game of the TGS. GG's to my opponent OG Albina. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing his side and thought process in certain turns. So with that, I'll catch you guys for week 6 of the TGS Pokemon Draft League.